Are we ready? All right. Well, good morning. I'm joined today by the city's Corporation Counsel, Conrad Mallett, and our private attorneys are here as well. But we are entering the next chapter in an effort to get the Census Bureau to actually count the people living in the city of Detroit. And today, we filed lawsuit against the Census Bureau in the federal court. This time, we're not challenging the 2020 census. We're actually challenging the annual estimates. And the way the census works is that a count of people is done every 10 years, and then each year the Census Bureau applies a formula by which they do an update. It's called a population estimate. And a lot of the funding is actually based on the annual estimates. Here's what we know, that the director of the Census Bureau admitted that in the 2020 count, they undercounted the African American population of this country more than 3% and the Hispanic population by 5%. Just on his admission, we know that they should have corrected 20,000 residents positive in the 2021 estimate. So we were shocked when the Census Bureau put out the 21 estimate and said, in the last year, Detroit lost another 7,100 people. Now, this just defies reality where there's cranes all over this city. In the one-year period in 2021, 14 new major apartment buildings with 1,000 units opened during that time. And my question is, how could anybody conclude we lost 7,000 people in 1 year? And so the way the process has always worked and the way the Census Bureau's rules work is that you can challenge that one-year estimate. They will give you the formula, and if you can show numbers that are wrong, they'll correct it. So I sent the letter to the Census Bureau saying, please give us whatever formula you could have used to do this because we want to challenge. And their response was, despite the fact that their rules say there's going to be a challenge, they're decided they're not doing a challenge this year, and they won't give us the formula. We have absolutely no idea what formula they could have possibly used to say Detroit lost 7,000 people this last year. But let me tell you the objective evidence we do have. In that same year period, DTE Energy says 7,544 more households in the city added gas and electric service. So the utility company says we didn't lose people, we had 7,544 more housing units. The Detroit Water and Sewer Department says we added 6,964 housing units during that year period, another major gain. And the United States Post Office, another branch of the federal government that we thought the Census Bureau might include in their formula, the US Post Office says the city of Detroit added 4,475 more residences delivering mail in that year. Those 4,475 residents would have had 11,000 people. So let me be clear on this. Had the Census Bureau just taken the data from their sister agency, the US Postal Service, they would have increased Detroit's population in the last year by 11,000. We don't know what formula they use because they won't tell us. Did they look at the number of housing units where we did 2,000 demolition and assume all those demolitions had people in them? We don't know. Are they taking the average age of the houses in this city, which they've used in the past, and assume people moved out, when in fact we know we've got thousands of land bank houses that have people renovating them and moving in? We don't know because they won't share that formula with us. There's no secrecy to the formula. There's no privacy. They took some combination of publicly available data and multiplied it together, and we are going to learn what that is. But the bottom line is this. It's now clear that the data coming out of the US Census Bureau is completely divorced from reality, and we intend to prove that. And we're looking forward for our opportunity in court. With that, I'll turn it over to our corporation counsel, Conrad Mallett.
So let me just paraphrase a bit from the complaint that we filed this morning. Historically, the Census Bureau regulations allowed municipality to submit evidence to correct inaccuracies in the annual population estimates. On January 9th, 2020, the Department of Commerce and the Census Bureau promulgated a rule suspending the population estimate program, indicating that in that same rule, that the program would come back in 2022. Without notice or opportunity for public comment, the Bureau adopted and applied a new rule, declaring on its website that it would not consider evidence of a miscount in its 2021 population estimate, and that the estimated population challenge program would be suspended until 2023. The Census Bureau, as the mayor indicated, has denied Detroit's request to submit evidence concerning the accuracy of the 2021 estimate, and has even refused, as the mayor indicated, to disclose to the city how it arrived at that conclusion. The city of Detroit believes that absent judicial intervention, we are without recourse and must have judicial assistance in correcting the 2021 population estimate undercount. We believe the Census Bureau's refusal to consider the evidence that its 2021 estimate of Detroit's population is wrong is in direct violation of its own rule and will cause City of Detroit residents decades-long harm. That's why we're here this morning, and that's why the lawsuit that was filed this morning was presented.
All right, and I know Congresswoman Lawrence has been held up and is intending to be here. She may be with us before we're done with that. We'll take any questions.
How complicated is this case going to be? I mean, what's kind of the road ahead for a case like this? I mean, essentially you're asking for the formula.
Historically, the federal government provided the formula, and each year the cities, if there was inaccurate data, would have the ability to appeal it. And so it's hard to imagine. You would assume you would have birth rates, death rates, people moving out, income tax filings. Usually, they just simply tell you what the formula is. And if they made a mistake, it's transparent and you can get it corrected. I have no idea why they are not sharing the formula now and why they are not allowing an appeal. And so it's going to be relatively simple. Federal court is going to look at this and say, did they violate their own rules in failing to have an appeal process? Is this discriminatory, and should we be able to see the formula? I have no doubt once we see the formula, it will be obvious to everybody where their miscalculation was, because the miscalculation is so huge that I don't think this will be that difficult. We just need to get our hands on the formula.
What would you say is the biggest concern here? Is it, federal dollars that Detroit could be missing out on?
Yeah, I mean, all federal funding, at least a large share of it, is based on population. Everything from money going to the school lunch program to Medicaid and the like. We're not trying to change legislative districts or anything like that. We're just trying to get our fair share of the money. And the way it works right now, we're going to spend the next decade with the residents of the city not getting the funding they deserve because somebody's not doing their job. Okay.
I'm not sure I understand. If everything is so clear, why in your opinion the Bureau
That has been a mystery to us from the beginning. We still have our 2020 appeals going on. We'll see how that goes, although this is not encouraging. But it's a complete mystery to me why literally some folks sat in a room, they said, this is the formula we're using across America. Birth rates, death rates, move in, move out, age of housing, we don't know what it is. But they calculated a formula that is known only to a handful of people in Washington, D.C. and the Census Bureau, and applied it to every city in the country. Why they would not disclose that formula is a mystery to me, unless they're so embarrassed about how inaccurate it is. But I don't know why they wouldn't disclose the formula. Hopefully, we'll get a judge who will require them to.
Will this result, I'm not sure if this is even on, will this result in the changing of the 2021 numbers? What's the?
If we won the appeal, it would, yeah. I mean, so typically what happens every year from 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, every year an estimate came out. Every year a formula came out. Every year, every city in America had a chance to look at the formula and see if the estimate was right and appeal it. And it would get corrected. That's what should be happening here, and I think you're going to see other cities in the country be asking the same questions that we are. Why is your census estimate formula not public?
And just to make sure I get everything right, so what is the difference between the complaint that you have with the 2021 and the 2020?
So
2020 and 2021?
they managed to screw them up in two completely different ways. So the 2020 census, they literally did not put enough workers in the field to get the count accurate. We got a challenge on that, but that challenge is still going on. They haven't denied that one yet, so we haven't sued them on that one yet. But then they put in an annual estimate, and that is some formula they've written up. Nobody went and counted anybody. They applied some formula. And so what we are now is, all we're suing on today is the 1-year change in estimate, where the Census Bureau said we lost 7,100 people, and the post office said we gained 11,000 people. We could just put the post office in charge of the Census Bureau to try to be a lot better off. And with that, I will turn it over to our leader in this fight in Washington, D.C., Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence.
Hello, everyone. I'm Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence, and I represent Detroit, being the representative for the 14th District. I want to get right to the point of why this is important to me as a member of Congress. I want everyone here to know, and why should it matter to you, the individual, the people of this city. Our Constitution, which we debate all the time, and we are mandated to operate as a democracy under this historic document. Article 1, Sections 2 and 9, the Constitution requires that every single person, I'm not making this up, in the United States must be counted. And I have been in really serious discussions with our mayor about this, and the impact of undercounts has really frustrated us as a government, because it's the tool that we have. For me, I'm an appropriator in Congress. I sit with my colleagues of the sole responsibility of appropriating funds. And every single dollar that I appropriate is mandated by the formula that is created by the count that we are expecting. Our expectations, when we're given the formula, it is a result of a census count. Now, if we're undercounted, even though I'm doing my job, I am not sending the dollars to Detroit that they deserve based on this Constitution. We know that the real world consequences of this, and that's why it should matter to all of us, is that it deprives cities, counties, and towns and tribal governments their fair intended share of resources for 10 years. This isn't, oops, we made a mistake, so now we'll fix it next year. This is for 10 years. And so that's why this is serious. And that's why when I hear the voice of the city talking about what we need, and if you would just stop for a moment and think about education, funding to ensure that teachers and buildings and transportation and in all the things that we expect when we send our children to school for 10 years, you will not receive the money that is deserved to you. That's why taking this step, and I made a commitment, and I will keep this going, is that we must have accountability, and we must call this out. And Detroit is not the only one. For me, this is just a personal insult to communities that are so needy of the tax dollars that we pay. When you send your taxes to the federal government, there's an expectation from every citizen of these United States of America that it will fulfill the needs of our community. How insulting is that? How wrong is that for me to send my dollars for tax to the federal government and you don't appropriate it based on numbers that are real and that numbers that actually counted, as the Constitution said, every single citizen. And so I want you to know that the African American community, the minority community, those who are poor, if you really believe in one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, we must stand together and fight to ensure that the tools that we establish to make that pledge a reality comes with an accurate count. And understand, the city of Detroit and our mayor, they're not asking for something extra. They're not saying, you know, guys, we deserve more money. We have more challenges, which we have many challenges. He's asking for what is constitutionally demanded that we do as a government. I want you to know that my subcommittee on Commerce, Justice, and Science, we call it CJS, we advanced language related to the Census Bureau's funding for the upcoming fiscal year. We told the Bureau find a way to expand the scope of the Population Estimates Challenge Program so that cities like Detroit, the city that I was born in, raised in, educated in, I now have the honor of representing my home, that the real chance to improve the accuracy of these annual numbers. I want to thank Gary Peters, who is the chairman of Homeland Security, and for successfully advancing language in the Senate version. And I want to thank Mayor Duggan again for convening this press conference. And we will use the judicial system. Our democracy stands on three legs: executive, legislative, and judicial. And this is not something that is an exception. We lean on the judicial system to enforce our laws, to be that leg that we stand on, to correct the things that we don't do right. And obviously, our count was not right. And we, as Detroiters, we know how to fight. And so I'm calling on everyone to stand with the mayor, to stand with me, and with our Congress, and with our government. And now we're demanding that the judicial system stand with us as well, so that we can make sure that I am counted as a citizen, and that we get this count right, so that we can take care of the people in this great city. Thank you.
Congresswoman, they may have some questions for you here, but let's see. Go ahead.
Yeah, I had another question about the 2020 challenge. So last week, the US Inspector General put out a report, I'm not sure if you saw it, that raised some concerns with the non-response follow-up organization that I think was like pretty essential to your challenge and the
Right.
results.
That's the centerpiece of our 2020 challenge.
Does that kind of bolster our challenge? What kind of impact do you think that will have?
So I know it's a little bit confusing, but you're asking good questions. There's two different things. The door-to-door count in 2020, which was a mess because of the failure of the non-response follow-up. The second thing is the annual update for 2021. So you're right, we are going to come back on the 2020 challenge in the future, but the feds have not yet denied our 2020 challenge. We haven't sued on that. If they do deny it, we'll sue at that point. But what's hard to believe is this is salt in the wound. They took another 7,100 residents, they said, left after 2020, which can't possibly be true. So today, all we are suing about is the one-year 2021 update. As I say, the Census Bureau says 7,000 people left the city in 1 year, which is impossible to believe. The Postal Service says 11,000 people moved in. I think the Postal Service is right.
Mayor, while you're standing here, I don't know if it's something you have committed to memory, but do you have a figure of what you think the population of the city is at this point?
You know, I think it's in the range of 670 or 680.
And taking a step back on the 2020 appeal, is that impacting in any way this estimate in 2021, or are they connected
No,
in some
this is what I
respect?
said. They managed to screw this up in a completely unrelated way.
But given if the premise that you're saying that they have obviously undercounted in the 2020, is the 2021 estimate based in any way off of that undercount already?
Yeah, so we should have been, I don't know, somewhere around 680, and we came in at 640. Then they dropped 7,000 off the 640, so it does have a compounding effect. So the question is, when can you sue? Legally, you can sue when your administrative remedies have run out. In 2020, we're still appealing to the Census Bureau. We can't sue because that appeal isn't final. We're actually going to probably win part of those appeals on 2020. 2021, I sent the director a letter saying, please send us the formula we're going to appeal, and he wrote back a letter saying, there's no appeal for the one-year estimate. At that point, our administrative options are done. It's appropriate to file a lawsuit. And that's the reason we filed the lawsuit only on the one-year estimate.
A couple other quick ones, if I may. When did the city learn about this estimate number?
I don't know, a few months ago when it came out.
It's been that, okay.
Yeah, well, it came out. I sent the Census Bureau director a letter to start the appeal process, and it got denied.
And have you, in your conversations with other mayors, other communities, are there others that are seeing similar issues?
Yeah, and I'm going to let other folks talk for themselves. But this is just strange that they're concealing the formula from the cities. I don't understand that.
And my last question, thank you for the time, is when we talk about decades-long harm, is there a financial number put with it? I've seen articles with the 2020 appeal that it could cost up to $150 million in revenue.
Yeah,
Is there a figure that you...
It's several $million. Whatever the number is, we want to get it right, because here's our problem. We don't know what's in this formula. They could have concluded 7,000 people left the city next year. What makes us think they aren't going to say another 7,000 left this year? Everybody in this town is dealing with rising property values and rising rents because so many people are coming in. But I have to protect us against the Census Bureau next year somehow deciding people left again. So we're drawing a line in the sand here. We're going to try to force accuracy out of these guys one way or the other.
Thank you.
You kind of answered this, but I just want to be clear. If they give us the formula, what happens next? Are we still suing? Is there...
So when they give us the formula, we will see exactly what the calculation is based on. Given the fact that the electric company says there's more houses, the water company says there's more houses, and the post office says there's more houses, it's inconceivable to me that there's a formula that shows Detroit lost population, but at least we'd be able to have a conversation. I think what the formula will show, it will show the error in their calculation. But if we get a formula and it turns out they're right, we'll admit they're right. I don't see how it could be true, but it'd be a whole lot easier to have the conversation if we saw the formula.
So your intention after this is when we get the formula, you just want to talk and see what happens. You don't have intentions of like fighting it yet or anything?
Well, again, we are asking the judge to require the Census Bureau to follow their rule, which was to provide for an annual appeal of the estimates as they always have in the past. If the judge requires them to follow their rule, two things will happen. One is they will give us the formula. Second is we will have an appeal process. And that's all we're asking for.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Cameron, anything you want to add to that?
No, it's dead on, Mr. Mayor.
All right, anybody have any other questions? All right, Congresswoman, thank you very much for being here. We appreciate you continuing the fight in Washington. Thank you.